Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video. I've got a very different one for you this time, as we're going to be talking about Star Wars again. This time we're going to be talking about a Star Wars movie I don't like, Episode 8, The Last Jedi, which is objectively the worst Star Wars movie of the sequel trilogy, and arguably the worst one of them all. Maybe Attack of the Clones and The Phantom Menace just edge it in terms of how terrible they are, but it's up there as one of the worst Star Wars movies ever made. But in today's video, I want to talk about a very specific scene in the movie. And that scene being the death of Luke Skywalker. Because he is arguably Star Wars' most iconic character. You know, he's been there from the very beginning. He was in episode 3, being born. He was in episodes 4, 5, 6, 7 for about a minute, 8 for most of the movie, and 9 as a ghost for Rey. So we're going to be talking about his death scene, and how it's a pretty woeful death scene, and a pretty terrible send-off for him, and how I would have changed that scene if I was the one in charge of making it. Because I feel like even though my version I've already thought about has some flaws, I still feel it's better than what we actually got. So to start off with, we need to rewind back to act and remember what actually happened in that scene. And I am going off memory here, as I've not watched the movie since December 2017 when it released in the cinema. Haven't watched it since. With good reason. I mean, why would I? It's terrible. So, Luke doesn't actually appear at this snowy location that the First Order has pinned the Resistance at. Luke uses force projection from the Jedi Temple on the island he spent the whole movie on to project himself into the snowy location. He says his last heartfelt goodbye to Princess Leia, which is quite a nice touch, especially considering Carrie Fisher sadly passed away 1 year before the movie released. So it meant even more than it would normally, because it's not him just saying goodbye to Princess Leia. It's like we're saying goodbye to Carrie Fisher at the same time. We're saying goodbye to the actual person, not just the character. So then Luke walks out to confront Kylo Ren. Kylo orders all his ships to start shooting at Luke. Of course, the ships do absolutely no damage to Luke because he's not actually there. So Luke and Kylo Ren walk up to each other in final confrontation. Kylo starts swinging his lightsaber, which Luke dodges every single swing, making Kylo believe Luke is actually there, only to then shove his lightsaber straight into Luke, and Luke doesn't get affected by it. It just goes straight through him as if he's not even there. Because technically he's not there. And Luke says his final goodbye to Kylo Ren. Then we switch back to him at the Jedi Temple as he dies. And his body of course disappears, and the Jedi robe is the only thing left of him. Now, that's a pretty woeful, as I said, and very cheap send-off to give Luke. Like, that's become such a trend over the last few years, hasn't it? Giving iconic characters from a franchise, finally killing them off, and then killing them off in the worst way possible. Just like Joel in The Last of Us Part 2. No one's complaining that these characters are being killed off. It's the way you're killing them off that's the problem. So my version would go a little bit like this. Luke would not use force projection. He'd actually be at that snowy location. So how would he be able to do that then? Well, what he'd have to do is, when Rey first interacted with him at the very start of the movie, after we spent 2 years waiting for that, the two of them to interact after the end of The Force Awakens, I'm pretty sure Rey asked Luke to come with her back to join the Resistance, and of course he said no. In my version, he would have said yes. He would have come along with Rey and Finn, and he would have joined back up with the Resistance. He would have still given Princess Leia the heartfelt goodbye that he actually did. That wouldn't have changed, really. But he would have walked up to Kylo Ren again, just like he actually did. But this time, Kylo Ren would call for all his ships to not fire, as he wants to confront Luke all by himself. So Kylo Ren would walk up to Luke, Luke would walk up to him, the two of them would turn their lightsabers on, and Luke would begin his final stand. The two of them would be having a very even lightsaber fight, none of them really being able to find an opening in the defense of the other one. And quick side note, have you even noticed about Luke in that movie? At the end of the Return of the Jedi, when Luke is just decimating Darth Vader right at the end, he then says, "I still feel the good in you, Father." Even though Darth Vader literally called for Alderaan to be blown up, and that's literally one of the first scenes in the whole franchise of Alderaan being blown up by the Death Star. But yet, Kylo Ren, "I had a bad dream." Luke, "Nope." Turns lightsaber on. I can't be having you can't be having a bad dream. No, you've got to go for that. I mean, Mark Hamill has said himself, he really does not like the way Luke was handled in the sequel trilogy. Because he went from being a young kid who knew nothing about the Jedi, to a Jedi Knight, to a Jedi Master, to then being the single only remaining Jedi in the universe. And yet he was reduced to basically nothing in the sequel trilogy, as if he hadn't done all those things over the years. Even though he had done all these things, he took down the old dark side of the Force. He took down Darth Vader. He helped take down the Emperor. But back to it, Luke and Kylo Ren, no one is able to break the defense of the other. And Rey decides to leave the base that the Resistance had been pinned down in, to actually have a look at what's going on between Kylo Ren and Luke, because she now knows both of them quite well. As of course in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren and Rey were able to use some weird Force power to where they could be in completely different parts of the universe, but through using the Force they could literally see each other. And speaking of that, the only good scene in that entire movie is the scene where Rey and Kylo Ren start fighting alongside each other against the Imperial soldiers. That is literally the only good scene in The Last Jedi. As The Last Jedi severely lacks lightsaber battles. It really lacks them. Not a single lightsaber battle in that movie I think is even good. So Luke notices Rey as he turns his head to look back at her and thinks, I need to stop prolonging the inevitable. The Force needs to move to a new host. So Luke holds his lightsaber vertically, turns it off, and allows Kylo Ren to strike him down, killing him. Have you figured out what that's a reference to yet? If you have, well done. If you haven't, that's basic. Well, that scene I basically just described that I've made is pretty much a copy of Ben Kenobi's death from A New Hope. Now, yes, this death heavily relies on nostalgia. It really has to pull at your nostalgia strings for this to be effective. But that is probably a flaw. That's when I said I can also see flaws in this idea. That's probably the big one. The fact that it heavily relies on nostalgia to make you like the scene. But I still think it's better than what we ended up getting, as it also means everything in the Jedi has now come full circle, because Ben Kenobi's death passed the Force on to Luke. And Luke would remember that. Maybe it would show a flashback to that very scene as well. Maybe they'd even use the footage from A New Hope of Ben Kenobi's death and Luke's reaction to it. They'd play a flashback of that very scene that Luke is remembering before then having the very same thing happen to him. Also, another reason why this wouldn't work as well as the original did back in A New Hope is because Rey can already use the Force. So Luke could not use the Force when Ben Kenobi died, whereas Rey already could use the Force, as she showed off in Episode 7. So it wouldn't work as well in that way, but I still feel that it would be better than what we actually got. It would just make Rey's Force powers stronger then. That's what it would end up doing. But I feel like it would be a really good way to close Luke's... That would be a much better way to close out Luke's entire story arc, because it ends... his life as a Jedi, and a Force user basically ends the exact same way it started. He witnessed the death of his mentor, at least in A New Hope. Ben Kenobi was Luke's mentor, and the way he died, he decides to go out the exact same way to pass on the Force powers to the next generation, which is what Ben Kenobi did for him. I feel like that would also mean Rey and Luke would have a better connection in The Rise of Skywalker whenever Luke appeared to her as a ghost. I feel like they'd also have a bigger connection. And in Episode 9, Luke would basically tell Rey the story of how Ben Kenobi did the very same thing for him all those years ago. But that is my idea for how I would change the death of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars The Last Jedi. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that is a better way to close out Luke's story arc than what we actually got? Or do you guys have another different version of his death that you thought of that's different to what actually happened and different to my version? Because if so, if you do have your own version that's completely different to mine, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to see what other people think of how they would change Luke Skywalker's death to make it better than the original, just like I think mine is. Because it's kind of hard to find any scenes other than the one I already mentioned about the Imperial soldiers that are actually good in this movie. Of course, the main argument against this idea is that Luke's death, this is just a copy and paste death from A New Hope. But Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is pretty much just a copy and paste of A New Hope, and The Rise of Skywalker is pretty much just a copy and paste of Return of the Jedi. So at least I'm picking one of the more emotional and impactful scenes from the original trilogy to bring into this one. As that's like one of the only scenes from the original trilogy, or at least from A New Hope, that didn't actually make its way into the sequel trilogy. And has the sequel trilogy made people appreciate the prequel trilogy more now? I mean, I've always appreciated the prequel trilogy. As bad as the first two movies are, we all know Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is absolutely goated. And if you didn't have those first two terrible movies, you wouldn't have got the best one come right at the end. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video. A very, very different one to what we were used to. If you guys have enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. And until next time, catch you later.